Councillors, we should have started the meeting by now. It's just after 5 o'clock, but we're waiting for the arrival of our legal advisor, Mr. Max Howarth. So we understand the arrival is here. He is. So we'll give Mr. Howarth a few minutes to settle in, and we'll start properly at 5:05. Thank you. Good evening, colleagues. I would like to welcome you to this meeting of the Plans Committee of Charnwood Borough Council today, Thursday, the 19th of June 2025. And thank you all for turning out on this very hot evening. And we will, we'll just have to put up with the heat. So please, could I ask everyone present to turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent to ensure that the meeting is distraction-free? And will you do this now, please? Thank you. I would like to remind all those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and that by attending the meeting, you are giving your consent to being filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. For those watching the live stream, the Planning Officer presentation has been published on the website for those who wish to view it and can be found on the agenda page for Plans Committee for today, the 19th of June 2025. Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time and will have 3 minutes to speak. When 1 minute of time is remaining, they will be advised by the Democratic Services Officer, Ms. Dobson. I would like to welcome Mr. Max Howarth, our legal advisor for the evening. Welcome. Ms. Dobson, have we received any apologies, please?
We've received an apology from Councillor O'Neill, and Councillor Haynes will be substitute. And we've also received an apology from Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. So welcome, Councillor Haynes, to this meeting. Thank you for joining us. Come to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. We have all seen the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 17th of April. Is the committee happy to confirm this as a correct record, the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of April? Could I see a show of hands, please? All those in favour, thank you. Any objections? Any abstentions? Thank you, Councillor Haynes. You were not present, of course. Yeah. So the minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed as a correct record, and I will sign these at the end of the meeting. Item 3, questions under committee procedure 12.8. Ms Dobson, have we received any questions, please?
I confirm no questions have been received.
Thank you. Item 4, disclosures of pecuniary and personal interests. Ms Dobson, have we received any disclosures of interest?
I confirm I've received declarations of interest from Councillor Snart, Councillor Taylor-Durant and Councillor Fryer in relation to item 5A, P250638/2, 20 Westfield Drive, Loughborough. They have received an email from the applicant. However, both councillors have confirmed, or all three councillors have confirmed they come to the meeting with an open mind. Also, Councillor Corey Loseley has declared that he's called in the application and will be speaking on the item, so he won't be taking part in the vote and will sit in the public gallery.
Thank you, Ms Dobson. Do any other councillors have any disclosures of interest to make? Could I see a show of hands, please? We'll take you in order then. Councillor Lenny.
Yeah, I also have had an email from the applicant for the case P/25/0638/2. But I'd still come to the meeting with an open mind.
And that goes for me also, Ms Dobson. I have received the email, but I come to the meeting with an open mind. Councillor Charles, please. Thank you. Councillor Smithovitz, same for you. Councillor Matthews. Thank you.
I didn't get the memo, but I live on Westfield Drive, but I come to this with an open mind.
Thank you very much indeed.
Sorry, Chair. Could you repeat that? I didn't hear what you said, sorry.
Sorry, I happen to live on Westfield Drive, which is where the property is, but I come to this with an open mind.
And would you say what you said also, please, Councillor Matthews?
Yeah, I received the same email.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't read the email because I recognised the name, so I didn't put myself in a position, so I couldn't do that.
Thank you for making that clear. Right. So, Councillor Corey Loseley, you'll be moving to the gallery. Thank you. So we come then to item 5, planning applications. Item 5A, number P/25/0638/2, 20 Westfield Drive, Loughborough. And Mr. Akram, I believe you're presenting for us this evening. Thank you. So when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for a change of use from dwelling house, use class C3, to house in multiple occupation, use class C4. This is site location plan with the actual application site outlined in red. This is the aerial view, which shows again the application site in red. It's situated to the northeast of Westfield Drive. There's a forecourt area to the front that could accommodate at least 3 parking spaces. And you've got the bungalow in the centre and a large substantial garden to the rear. In terms of some of the actual constraints itself, the application site is situated within Loughborough, close to university and town centre and the college. In terms of the application side, where the red line boundary is adjacent to the conservation area, which is hatched in green, but it's not part of the conservation area. So as far as the student halls of residence, there's one situated to the north of the site. And as far as in terms of the footpath itself that links Westfield Drive to Ashby Road, that's highlighted in blue. These are some of the photographs. So you've got the top left, that's the application site, which contains a double-fronted bungalow. Then you've got top right, which is the application site in context with the adjoining bungalow. Bottom left, you've got the garage, which is set back and to the side of the existing bungalow, and then you got the garage. Then you got the garden to the rear. As far as the floor plans, the present use of the property is a private dwelling. There are no proposed alterations or extensions as part of this application. There are also no internal reconfiguration to the layout that will remain as per existing. The proposed HMO use will provide 3 bedrooms and with communal facilities such as kitchen, lounge and bathroom. In terms of the key considerations for this application, which are set out within the actual report, from principle of development, I could start off by saying that the MPPF and the local plan policy CS1 and CS3 support housing development and aim to meet diverse housing needs, including HMOs. Policy CS4 seeks to manage HMO concentration to protect community well-being, character, and amenity. It aims to prevent issues like noise, parking problems, and social imbalance. In respect to HMO concentration, the assessment has been done and shows that there are 8.9% of the residential properties within 100-metre radius that are HMO, and it is well below the 20% threshold as set out within the housing SPD. The emerging local plan policy H7 proposes a stricter 10% threshold within the 100-metre radius and a sandwiching rule, avoiding placing a C3 dwelling between 2 HMOs. The proposed HMO would be below the 10% threshold as per emerging local plan, avoids sandwiching, and is also detached from the neighbouring HMO. Overall, in terms of principle, the proposal complies with current policy. The development supports housing diversity without causing over-concentration. However, other individual considerations as set out within the local plan policies CS4 and emerging policy H7 need to be considered. As in terms of the standard of accommodation, the proposed HMO bedroom sizes exceed the minimum size as per National Described Spacing Standards for one-person rooms. There's adequate communal space and good natural light and outlook provided to ensure high standard of living accommodation. Is also the rear garden that is suitable and private for the proposed use. In terms of the amenity and the impact and character, I've already discussed about the concentration, that the proposed HMO would be below the threshold and considered acceptable. It's worthwhile to highlight, as I did within my officer report, appeal decision on adjacent site that was allowed despite concerns over community HMO impact. Westfield Drive is a quiet no-through road compared to neighbouring roads, and the proposal is modest scale that would not alter its character. There are no external alterations proposed, so the street scene remains unaffected. In respect to the student halls to the north of the site, they are separated by landscaping and boundary treatment and access via Ashby Road, further limiting their impact on Westfield Road's character. The site's proximity to town centre, college, university, supports sustainable living and community balance. In respect to amenity, the application being detached with only 3 bedrooms reduces the likelihood of noise transfer. There's an appeal decision next door that supports the view that a modest HMO do not necessarily intensify impact compared to family homes. There's also information from the Borough's Council's Community and Partnership Department that has specified that there has been no recent antisocial behaviour incidents on Westfield Road. There would be a condition attached to restrict the number of bedrooms and occupancy as part of any approval. Please note that the Environmental Health have also raised no objection, but requested a property management plan. However, such a condition are not enforceable under planning rules, as confirmed in a separate appeal decision within the officer report in paragraph 9.4.11. From a bin storage, littering, and fly tipping and letting signs, the site plan shows adequate bin storage behind a wall, hedge, maintains existing collection arrangement. Site visit confirms no visible waste issues on Westfield Road. There will be a compliance condition again recommended as part of any approval to ensure bin storage is implemented and maintained. In respect to highway safety, the existing access arrangement is unchanged and deemed suitable by the Local Highways Authority. No highway safety has been identified based on recent collision data. The site is well located for walking, cycling to town centre and universities. There are 3 parking spaces provided that meet the Leicestershire Highway Design Guide standards, and a cycle storage condition would be attached as part of any approval, as recommended by Leicestershire Police, that would provide alternative modes of transport. In terms of any other matter, that the proposed change of use is not expected to affect the setting of Ashby Road Conservation Area, which is adjacent to the site. As far as in terms of the conclusion and the planning balance, the basket of most important policies are policy CS1, CS4, and say policy ST2, which are all considered up to date. Therefore, the tilted balance in paragraph 11D2 of the MPPF is not engaged. The proposal complies with the 20% threshold in housing SPD and CS4, the 10% threshold in emerging policy H7 of the local plan, and thereby avoiding community imbalance. The development provides acceptable residential amenity, no harm to safety, no harm to highway safety, no adverse impact on the character or amenity of the area. The adjacent peel site supports the proposal through its way. The adjacent appeal site supports the proposal, though its weight is reduced due to the emerging local plan policy progression. The recommendation put forward for members today is to grant permission, subject to conditions, as set out on this slide and on page 29 and 30 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Akram. We have 2 speakers, Mr. Mark Hutchinson, who is the applicant, and of course, Councillor Rees Corey Leslie, who was called in the application. So, Mr. Hutchinson, please, if you'd like to come forward, make your presentation to us. You have 3 minutes, and Ms. Dobson will tell you when you have 1 minute left. Thank you. When you're ready, please.
Okay, first of all, I'd just like to apologise if I wasn't meant to send that letter to the members. The reason for doing so was I didn't know I was going to be able to change my flight today. I have pulled it forward and got here straight from the airport. So I am the applicant for this small HMO for 3 people. The senior planning officer recommends approval for the proposal, and I make the following points. My family have owned and lived in the application property for most of the last 50 years. I'm a lifelong resident of the borough, and I'm not an absent landlord. I take my responsibility seriously to ensure the social character of the area is maintained. In 2023, the neighbouring property received over 30 resident objections, including Sarge and an HMO for the HMO application. This was approved at appeal, as we've heard, and neighbours are now aware this property has been well maintained and the HMO residents have integrated, resulting in objections to this particular application, reducing to only 3 and nothing from Sarge. When the neighbouring property went to appeal, the inspector's report stated that the HMO ratio was to deal with the applications consistently, and as the existing HMO ratio was less than 20% and even less than 10% of the emerging plan, he'd support it. That's important, and the existing HMO ratio for this application is 8.9%, and so that too is below the current 20% threshold and the 10% within the emerging plan. In fact, the same methodology was applied to a recent HMO proposal on William Street by a senior planning officer in her decision. None of the consultees, highways, police, housing standards and environmental health have any objections. The application site has parking for at least 3 vehicles, thus avoiding on-street parking. In fact, if you have a look at your aerial view, I think you can see 6 vehicles on there. A bin storage is already provided. No property alterations are to be made, as we've heard. The application property is detached, and so it's likely there'll be any disturbance to neighbours, and a cycle store will be provided in the existing brick garage. Finally, the planning officer hasn't come to this recommendation lightly. He's been mindful that the inspector's decision and reasoning at appeal of the neighbouring property applies to this proposal. The office has concluded the proposal accords with relevant planning policies and is unlikely to be detrimental to the social character, general amenities, highway safety, waste management and disturbance in the area. For the above reasons, I request the proposal is approved. Thank you and best regards.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. If you wish, you can leave the meeting now, or you can stay and listen to the debate. It will be very exciting. Councillor Corey Losley, please. You know the drill, of course. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and members of the committee for your time today. The recommendation from the officer is to approve, and having read the report, would imagine that the committee will be minded to accept that recommendation. That said, I have a couple of points for the committee to note, and a question for the planning officer as well. Firstly, though, I would like to briefly explain why I called this application before the committee, and why I think it is worthwhile it being considered by members in public session rather than by officers under delegated powers. There is intense public interest in the proliferation of student accommodation in the Southfields ward and in the surrounding town of Loughborough as well. While it is not assured that 20 Westfield Drive will be occupied by students, it is highly likely that it will be, given the proportion of HMOs in the rest of the town that are. In any case, and irrespective of whether the occupants are students or not, the continuing ubiquity of Class C4 properties in Southfields inevitably affects the character and appearance of the area and brings disturbance and issues with parking, as the officer report acknowledges. The first thing I would like the committee to note is that it is disappointing that HSPD 11 does not count the nearby purpose-built student accommodation in its calculation towards the 100-metre saturation rate. On the contrary, it actively precludes it. I can't know what the rationale for this was when the HSPD 11 was written, but I do know that it is a common refrain that PBSAs relieve some of the pressure that HMOs put on the town. This could be why PBSAs were excluded, but I'm yet to see any quantifiable evidence of a causal relationship, and it remains that PBSAs are a source of negative externalities, noise, parking, change of character, in many of the same ways that C4 HMOs are, and therefore they should have been included by HSPD 11 if its objective really is to understand cumulative impacts as it states. The second thing I would like the committee to note is that it is again disappointing that we have a request for a property management plan from a statutory consultee that we're not going to get. The report rightly points out that planning is not able to enforce a PMP, so the conditions do not provide for one. The Charnwood Environmental Health Officer states that they have no objections to the application subject to a PMP coming forth. So on the basis that's not happening, should we take it that Environmental Health does object in the absence of any procedures to mitigate any noise or nuisance as they have requested? Finally, I would like some reassurance from the officer that when approval of this application puts us close or very near to the threshold, the 10% threshold sought by policy H7 of the emerging local plan, can we be sure that we're protected from further C4 proliferation in the immediate 100-metre area around number 20? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corey Leslie. Thank you. I'll come to the planning officer first, Councillor Matthews, and then to you. Would you like to respond to anything that you've heard?
No. That's fine. In terms of a few of the points, one was. Is that? Yeah. Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay. In terms of a few points, there's a question around policies HSD 11, and in terms of why the student accommodation were being removed from the actual concentration aspect or cumulative impact as part of it. As far as the policy, that's how it's been written, and also with the student accommodation, there's a further policy further down which actually deals with the actual student accommodation itself. There's two aspects to the HSD 11. Bear with me. There's two aspects with HSD 11, what were considered as part of this application. One was that it does actually specify, So one, it does specify that the halls of residence and purpose-built student accommodation will not be included within the calculation, but the second aspect does actually say that any halls of residence or purpose-built student accommodation falling within the radius will be recorded and impact considered. And that's where the appeal decision also considered that aspect, where they said that where the Westfield Drive is, and you've got the boundary treatment, whether it's a mature landscaping, and where the access arrangement is, so therefore there will be no impact in terms of the character of Westfield Drive as part of it. So that was considered as part of this application. So that was one. In relation to property management plan, I explained within the presentation, there is a paragraph which clearly specifies that. What you have to realize is that whether a condition is enforceable. So there's the MPPF and the PPG guidance specifies the 6 tests for us as a local planning authority to attach a condition. And one of them has to be in terms of the enforceability aspect. How do we enforce such a condition? When it comes up to the property management plan, if there's other regulations, whether it's a HMO licensing, whether it's the responsibilities of the landlord or the tenant under the tenancy agreements, all this, but then you've got, whether you're trying to specify in terms of the nuisance, there's still regulation which applies separately from planning. Likewise with the antisocial behaviour, which clearly clarified within the report that there are regimes which actually control this as part of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Akram. I have 2 councillors who are wanting to speak. I have 3. So I have right. Right, I have Councillor Matthews, Councillor Frye, Councillor Snort, Councillor Infield and Councillor Smithowitz. Councillor Matthews, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I've got
A few things that I want to sort of point out. It feels a little bit like we're being asked to decide on whether people who are going to be in the property are suitable or not. It is not the job of this plans committee to decide on who is a better person than another. It's not on anybody's. In society should be making decisions like that, let alone a plans committee here at CBC. I'm not comfortable with that at all, and I'm not getting into that. In terms of the property itself, listening to both arguments, starting with the applicant's arguments that he's put forward, which I think are pretty good. We're well below the threshold. Within 100 metres. The applicant also, I think it needs to be pointed out, the applicant stated quite clearly, very passionately, that he's owned this property for 50 years. It was his home. Now, if he wants to rent that out to anybody, that's for his reason, that's up to him, which is fine. With that comes an emotional connection. He's going to be all over this property, making sure the neighbours are well looked after, that he probably has built relationships up with across the street and so forth. And again, I'm not happy with, how can I phrase this, being asked to decide on what sort of person is going to go into a property and what sort of person is not. It's not up for us to decide that. I'm not comfortable with that at all. We've got restrictions on the number of bedrooms, so the number of people in the property is going to be kept to a minimum. We've got car parking, ample off-street parking. I'm very much of the opinion that we move to accept officers' recommendations in full without amendments straight away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will second Councillor Matthews' proposal that we accept officers' recommendation in full. What I was going to say is, once again, we are presuming that any properties that are an HMO are going to be occupied by badly behaved students. And we can't do that. We are now getting more and more people who are doing postgraduate courses and are not 18-year-olds just leaving home. This property, it's on a large site. It's got an enormous garden at the back. The owner of the property has very much got a long history with it, and therefore I agree with Councillor Matthews. I don't think he's going to let it go to rack and ruin. And also, he's not altering any of the dimensions. It's that if one of my grandchildren or my daughter decided they wanted to do a postgrad course at Loughborough University, having living in Loughborough, in Surrey, this would be an ideal property. And I think we are very in danger of every time we get an application, we immediately think it's going to be young students who are going to misbehave. And if you read in the report, or it was said somewhere, the house next door that was for students, I don't know what age they are, that's not our concern, is that they have integrated very well. So I don't see a problem. Therefore, I suppose that we accept officers' recommendation as proposed by Councillor Matthews. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Councillor Snort, please.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Just to test my understanding around all of this, I look at page 17, Leicester Police. No objections, subject to security recommendations in relation to male security, male entrance, internal door, CCTV. Have we just lost sight of that in terms of putting this forward? I didn't see anything of that. I did see about the cycle security, but it would just be interesting to know what have we actually dismissed that as not necessary. I've got one more after that, if I could.
Mr. Akram, please. When you're ready.
That's fine. Thank you, Chair. In terms of Leicestershire Police, the security measures, what they've actually specified So we have attached a condition with regards to the secure cycle storage. And there is a paragraph under, I think it's 9.8.2, which talks about the suggested measures which would be attached as informative to be added to the decision notice. They have been forwarded to the applicant for them to consider within the design and the layout itself when they actually do as part of any refurb work. But they're not something whereby we could actually start imposing condition in regards to the male security or the door specification as part of it. But with regards to the CCTV, I think it becomes a bit more, if it's a commercial area or commercial development, it's a lot easier. When it comes up to more of a residential use, then it's more where there has to be some kind of a consent between the landlord and the tenant. And you go into further territory whereby how do you actually try to then, is it necessary and can we actually enforce as part of it as well?
The other bit was when I look at page 24, which is 947, it talks about, it was also worth highlighting that the antisocial behaviour and nuisance falls outside planning remit. I thought we should have regard to the Police and Crime Act. Is that not the case, or doesn't that fall under that?
So you've got two aspects. In terms of one is what our SPD and our current policy specifies. So we could assess the current situation, which we have done. We've consulted our community network team, which have confirmed that there is no antisocial behaviour and other kind of issues. But when it comes up to is how the appeal inspectors even considered this issue, whereby if you've got an antisocial behaviour or a nuisance, then there's different regimes which will come into effect, whether it's a police, whether it's certain council departments, which govern in terms of under the Environmental Act about whether it's nuisance and so on, and that's where it comes down to then that it doesn't fall within the planning remit, but there's other regimes which actually govern that as well.
Just to clarify, when we look at the 947 as well, it says the part of the application, there's been information received from the Council Community Partnership Department. There's no record incidents of antisocial behaviour. Does that include antisocial behaviour that's been recorded by the police?
All I could do is I did go back to the actual community and partnership officer, and it's what is the yearly statistic, what have occurred and what have been recorded. I can't really confirm it's something what the actual department's confirmed, but whether it's being recorded by the police, it's another thing. So, yeah. Sorry.
For future looking at this, just to make sure that we do actually record everything that happens in the area, not only by the Borough Council, but also the police. Thank you, Manager.
Thank you, Councillor Snoran, and I will ask officers if they could take a note of that for future reference. Thank you. Thank you for that, bringing that to our attention. Councillor Infield, please.
Thank you, Chair. So first, I'd like to agree with the others who commented that we cannot and should not judge the future occupants of this property. However, I'm a bit puzzled with regard to emerging policy H7. So H7 has considerable force now as we're very near to the end of our plan approval process. And in paragraph 9.1.10, it seems to say, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, that if we agree to this HMO, then the density will be 10.71%, exceeding the 10% of the rule. So if that's the case, then surely the idea of Rule H7 is to limit HMO densities. And it would seem not to do that if we exceed the density. Admittedly, the next one along the line would then be in a worse situation, but I'm a little bit puzzled. So perhaps the officer could clarify that for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, through you. In terms of the concentration, so that paragraph actually reads in two ways. As one, in terms of what the policy requires what's the existing current situation. The current situation is below the 10%, but then it does clarify within the same paragraph that with this additional one, we would go into where it's going to be slightly marginally over, but the policy requirement, whether it's our current one with the housing SPD, which talks about the 20%, it talks about the existing and the current situation. Likewise, with our emerging local plan policy, H7 also specifies in terms of the concentration have to be less than the 10%. So that's how we assess it. Yeah.
Mr. Howes, would you like to raise a point?
No, Chair. I was just going to check whether Councillor Matthews, because he's already said that the committee should vote in accordance with the recommendation, but I just wanted to make it clear that he was actually making a proposal. Yeah, to grant in accordance with the officers. Okay, that's fine. I just want to make it clear, just for the record.
Yeah, yes, I do apologise. You didn't formally say, I would like to propose we accept officer's recommendation, but I think we all knew what you meant, but Mr. Howard is quite right. Would you like to say it again so we're clear, please?
Everybody listen carefully. I shall say this only once. I recommend that we proceed to move to recommend officers' recommendations. Is that good enough? Is that okay? Have I hit the nail on the head? Okay.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Councillor Fry.
I think everybody would be surprised that I would keep very quiet on this one, but I fought very hard for the 10% back in 2018, and we're virtually there. But I'm very familiar with this area and the number of students and postgraduates. We've recently had quite a few houses bought in my own ward for the postgraduates, so they don't particularly worry me. The size of the ward in comparison to the number of students that live in it is quite right. It is one of the largest wards containing students. I actually have the official number, but I'm not going to mention those now. I think what's really hitting me on this one is, and I drove by at the weekend to have a look at it, it's a bungalow, and we've had many bungalows taken over and adapted. I know this one is not likely to be adapted and erased and rebuilt, but equally I'm very aware of the key issues of the principle of development, 9.1.1 on page 19. Paragraph 63 of the MPPF states that size, type and tenure of housing need for different groups in the community should be assessed and reflected in planning policies. These groups should include those who require affordable housing, families with children, and I noted the very large garden, older people, and we have a shortage of bungalows, and students and people with disabilities. Our students have been more than catered for in Loughborough now. There is an abundance of accommodation. In fact, rooms are being sold off in the purpose-built sector. So that was part of my worry. Westfield Avenue has featured in complaints on noise, as those that sit on the community liaison group with the university could probably testify. I actually was looking back at the paperwork today, and Westfield Drive did feature, not as much as many of the other roads, but equally many of the roads just coming off Westfield Drive have got 90% saturation from students. I think of York Road, and I'm trying to think of the name of the road where the Polish club is, and it's gone blank. But so we have an awful lot of students in that area. And of course, close to the college, it would be quite practical to think about students going in from the college who incidentally have reduced. There are no students allowed on the college campus, so they have to find places to park. And unfortunately, they find friends and park on their driveways, because that's the practice that we know happens. So there are other things I would like to mention, but I won't. But I did feel I have to give a view of what it's like living around this area, and I'm sure you will have appreciated, your time in Loughborough. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Smithers, thank you very much for that contribution. Before we go to the vote, Mr. Akram, have I got this another point clear? Should we grant permission, that would not be the end of the line for the applicant. The applicant would then have to apply for an HMO licence. Have I got that correct, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first stage in terms of the planning process, but the next stage will be that they have to go through the HMO licensing application, and that's with a separate department of the council.
Thank you.
As one more point I meant to mention, the police deal with, I think it's normally 3 complaints before they actually register it.
Right. Councillor Matthews, because I'm anxious to get to the vote.
I don't know if I need to mention it, but I just thought I'd better be safe that you need to apply for a HMO licence, the applicant. I sit on the licensing committee as well. I just want that to be clear.
I will be corrected, I'm sure, but the licensing application for an HMO is dealt by it's not part, doesn't go before the licensing committee. You're quite right, Councillor Matthews, thank you for that. But I am moving now to the vote. We have a proposal made by Councillor Matthews, seconded by Councillor Fryer, that we accept officer's recommendation. May I have a show of hands, please, for all those in favour?
That's 7, Chair.
Any against?
That's 1.
And I will abstain.
1 abstention. So the motion is carried. Sorry.
So Councillor Winfield? Thank you.
Okay, so that's 3 abstentions, but the motion is carried.
All right. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much, colleagues. We now come to item 6. A perennial favourite, list of applications determined under delegated powers. These are on page 4 to 30 of the extras report here. Does any member of the committee have any questions or comments, please? Thank you. Then may I ask if the committee are happy to note the report? Could I have a show of hands, please? Thank you, that's unanimous, I believe. I'm closing the meeting at 5:52. I believe that we've broken the record for a short meeting. But before I go, may I remind colleagues that we meet next on the 17th of July. And thank you all for attending this evening, and have a lovely, what is the rest of the evening. Take care and a safe journey home.